Do you ever feel like your brain is overflowing? Like it just has too much information? This is not something that our ancestors had to deal with. This is a new phenomenon. I've heard it said that people 50 years ago, the amount of information that an average internet user today consumes or intakes, processes in their brain, it would take a person 50 years ago like a week to take in that much information. People 100 years ago, they wouldn't intake as much information as an average internet user does in a day in their entire life. I'm not sure how much truth or factual basis there is to that, but it makes you think. So, back to the question, do you ever feel like your brain is overflowing? And primarily that overflow is coming from digital noise. You're not alone. I feel it and I'm not even a big time internet user. If you're just sitting there scrolling on feeds, I mean, I've overheard conversations of people talking about getting stuck on TikTok like a whole day. I mean, how many different topics, how much different random stuff is being consumed? And we are sponges. Our minds are sponges. Everyone, I don't care who you are, I don't care what level of training that you've done, everyone is impressionable. That's why the people that design these algorithms, that design these apps, most of the time they don't use them. If they do, it's very, very extremely limited. They don't let their kids use them. Once again, if they do, it's very, very extremely limited and controlled. And frankly, that is how I try to approach it. I've gotten back on social media because, anyway, if you've been following along, I felt called to share. A 2024 study found that the average person touches their phone 2,600 times a day. That's crazy. If you just take 5 minutes though, and are able to consciously unplug and quiet the mind, still the breath, there are measurable effects. You can reduce stress by 31% and boost focus by 23%. So that's what we're going to do in this video. We're going to explore how just taking a little break can create big changes inside of you, create space in your mind, create less dis-ease and more ease, and allow for you to feel more at peace. So, the relentless noise of now, the digital overload, it is what it is. Either it's by design or it's just incidental, none of that matters. But the reality is that we're here now. And if you're going to exist in the world and not be of it, but you want to have the peace that you deserve, you have to create little micro vacations, little breaks to unplug, take a break. You have to figure out how to get away from the constant notifications. We are always on right now. If you send a text, if you send a message, you want a reply right now. And it's expected more and more and more. A decade ago, you'd send an email, well, you're gonna hear back when you hear back. It's just become a much more accepted and expected way of doing things for an immediate reply to happen. Well, why don't you have your notifications on? Why is your phone on Do Not Disturb? Well, it is what it is. I need to unplug, I need to take a break. And so it's essential for each of us to carve out those times to do that. If you're taking a break, if you're having a mindful moment, your phone needs to be on Do Not Disturb. You can set timers that have, a peaceful, gradual transition to bring you back to the moment, but it is essential to be able to unplug and to unplug regularly. There's many, many successful people in the world who they'll unplug for a week out of every month. They'll unplug for a couple of days out of every month. Or people who unplug for a whole month at a time out of the year. It's not that there's one way that works for everyone. but there is a way that works for you and works for me and works for our neighbor and our partner. And finding what works for you in your flow, in your life, in your little piece of this modern world that expects us to be on at every moment. It is essential. It is essential to your health, mentally, physically, spiritually, however that looks for you. It is absolutely essential for you to carve out time, for us to carve out time to create places of freedom and just space without the noise. You know, get out into the forest for a little bit, get up on the mountain, go by the creek, go to the park. Wherever you're at, there's somewhere that is peaceful and will rejuvenate you. You know, there's plenty of videos online right now of people standing on the ground with their shoes on, with a voltmeter, nothing's happening. You take those shoes off, you stand on the ground, it spikes like 12 plus times of what you're experiencing. There's something to grounding, there's something to getting in nature, to breathing consciously and absorbing that frequency and vibration that is our natural flow. Every individual has a natural frequency. Our humanity has a natural frequency. Our planet has a natural frequency. Essentially, every bit of modern life is throwing us off of that natural frequency. And so I challenge each of us to explore that peace that comes from aligning with nature, from aligning more with our natural frequency, and explore what works for you. It's not going to be one size fits all for everyone. There are common signposts on the way back home, as cliche as it sounds, but it's a unique path. Just like every molecule in the river, it's flowing to the same spot, but you know, these quadrillions of different molecules are all taking a unique path to get there. And so each of us occupying our unique body, our unique mind, we are here to learn and to grow. No matter how you look at life, no matter what your approach to spirituality, what your approach to any of it is, that is the reality. We're here to learn and to grow. If we're not, then we're stagnating, and it's going to be a pretty boring life that you don't evolve, and we are called to evolve. So, the link between perpetual online presence and rising anxiety and burnout rates. Studies show a 30% increase in anxiety disorders linked to excessive social media use among young adults in 2024. We know that these algorithms are designed to feed you more of what you spend time with. And over a decade ago, we had whistleblowers testifying before the legislative branches telling us that, hey, these things are designed to make you feel inadequate. They're designed to make young girls feel inadequate. I just saw the other day that Denmark they're making it illegal for children 15 and under, people 15 and under, to use social media. I think that's great. I'm not for a police state, but I know that up until the age of 8, scientifically, children are literally being programmed. Their operating system, how they approach life, how they view life, every bit of how they're going to be when they're in their 20s, their 30s and beyond is being imprinted then. And if you're just being bombarded by information that is specifically designed to make you feel inadequate, to make you feel like you are less than, and any other thing that's just being pushed on you other than, you know, loving yourself, exploring the world, you know, finding your true place in the world, that's a danger. And so anyway, we'll see what comes from that. But comparing ourselves to others, it absolutely fuels dissatisfaction. Primarily nobody's actually showing their real self on social media. A 2025 survey indicated that 65% of individuals feel inadequate after viewing social media feeds. if you are being honest with yourself, this is what it does. I mean, truly, if you just sit there and scroll, I mean, people are showing the highlights of their life. They're showing false realities of their life ever increasingly now. The surprising impact of digital overload on genuine human interaction, it is staggering. Data from 2023 showed a 20% decline in face-to-face interactions among smartphone users. And we see that ever increasingly. We're ever more connected, but ever more disconnected from each other. Get out. It's okay to talk to strangers. If somebody feels really off, I mean, don't talk to them. But the majority of people don't talk about politics, don't talk about religion. We all have something that we can relate to. We all love, we all experience joy. We all are in this world where we've been chopped up, incidentally, accidentally, intentionally, it doesn't matter. But your neighbors, your people that you're close with, you deserve to be able to see each other. FaceTime is such a great invention. We can be across the world and we can actually look at each other. We can feel the actual interaction. We can see the micro communications that are experienced through looking at another person. Don't know the actual statistics, but the children that were born during the whole mask phase of what happened 5 years ago, we'll see how they develop, but so many of them not being able to actually see the nonverbal cues of communication from their parents and the world at large, it definitely had impacts on them. And so they still have a couple of years of being programmed, if you will, and hopefully just positive, loving things are able to happen to them and they're able to bounce back from that. But communication in like this, like looking at each other, it is so, so critical. There's an enhanced ability to concentrate on complex tasks without interruption when you spend time in mindfulness, when you consciously cultivate that. The average person's attention span, it has absolutely dwindled. I once again just paraphrasing facts from studies, but in the early 2000s and the late 90s, the average person's attention span, the average adult's attention span was like 15 seconds. As social media came online, it shrank like by half every couple of years. And the last that I heard any real meaningful reporting on it, I think it was like 2012, 2011, and the average attention span of a person was like 2-3 seconds. So consciously cultivating that, it's going to have far-reaching effects in every aspect of life, whether it's having a more meaningful relationship with your partner, with your children, with your family, with your coworkers, just a random person, and with yourself. In mindfulness, spending time just in quiet, with your phone on silent, not in the state of digital overload. It builds that and gives you back that ability, which is a gift. It is a gift to be able to concentrate, to just be still. This brain is the most complex thing in the universe. You look at an image of the brain and you look at an image of the universe and you cannot tell the difference. People that are way smarter than me have spent years researching this and looking for other similarities in nature that have any sort of comparable similarity. And there's nothing. There's no accident to that. Reality is so much more complex than we are able to currently comprehend. The smartest people in the world will sit around and debate on stage for hours and hours and hours about whether or not we live in a simulation. It really doesn't matter. But the reality is that we exist in higher dimensions, but we experience these three that we are in. And there's a lot going on out there. You know, there's no accident that they say like 90% of our DNA is junk, and yet 90% of reality we can't see, we don't experience it. Reality is a trip. It's wild. We are we are so complex, and we are so interconnected and connected. It's truly it's once you start to dive down that rabbit hole, it's wild. I mean, there has to be something, and nothing is something. So just unplugging, though, you know, it adds to improved sleep quality. You know, putting your phone on do not disturb, getting away from the screens as much time before you go to sleep as you can, actually holding books. There's new research that's coming out showing that actually reading information on paper versus the screen, you learn so much more. It's integrated so much more thoroughly into the mind, and on and on and on. You know, your eyes get tired, your brain gets tired. You know, from a scientific perspective, these screens are pumping radiation into our bodies. So the less time that we can spend, you know, just being bombarding ourselves, even if it's positive information, the more time that we can spend away and step back. You know, if we're learning something, read it and then spend time with that, integrate it. If we're watching something that we're gaining information from, hit pause, take a step back, take a walk, and just ponder those things instead of just continually bombarding ourselves. We're going to feel better, we're going to learn more, and we're going to be able to integrate all of these things more. You know, I think Jim Rome, he said, you know, stand at the doorway of your mind and protect it. It is essential to protect what we consume, whether it's just in the, you know, in the background or whatnot. You know, when I went to the auto repair shop last week, I'd take the truck in, ad on the news. I had to get out of that waiting room immediately. I planned on not spending time in there anyway, but you know, the news, it's important to not have your head in the sand. You need to know what's going on in the world. And there's so many different ways now that we can do that. But this information overload, especially with the news cycle and the flow of the world, it is so important to take a step back. Don't watch the news, read the news, you know, skim it. And, you know, basically we all know what's going on, unless if we're just completely obtuse. And we don't need to have it dominate our conversations. We really probably shouldn't have it be part of our conversations ever, very rarely. And just taking a step back from all the information that's pushed on us. You know, make a time every day or multiple times a day for you to take a step back, to put your phone on do not disturb and just take little micro vacations. Give your mind, give your eyes, give your body, give your spirit a break from the constant barrage of information, however that looks for you. And just explore it. Explore yourself. Get to know yourself. Journal. How do you feel when you take those breaks? You know, set boundaries between you and your devices. It's essential. It's essential for everyone to do it. These devices have a frequency and a vibration, and it does not align with our natural frequency and vibration. And so the more time that we can spend outside in a park for a couple minutes, unplugged, and just breathing rhythmically, just allowing for the breath to be as deep as possible in a slight break, as deep as possible out in the slight break, and just feel that. Feel the flood of oxygen that is the love of our planet filling us up and rejuvenating us. It has far-reaching effects in our lives. Get into hobbies that disconnect from the screen. There's, cognitive boosts that happen when you get off of the screen. You sleep better. You restore emotional balance. You cultivate deeper, more meaningful relationships. You'll have better conversations the more time that you spend off of the digital medium and just making these little breaks, whatever that looks for you, taking these little vacations. It's a muscle. It's a muscle to be built. It's a muscle to be built. And just create a digital detox plan for yourself. There's all sorts of resources out there, but this is what I challenge us to do. I think that it's coming. More and more people have gotten off of social media, and kind of have unplugged from that reality, unplugged from the constant barrage of, whether it's intentional or not. It's mostly unintentional. It's mostly the subconscious, but it's just a subconscious FOMO. Fear of missing out, of, this is happening out there, and man, I'm not doing that. I don't have a McLaren. I'm not, at XYZ resort in the Caymans, or I'm not at Burning Man. Like, so what? You're living your flow, and just being grateful, making a practice of gratitude for where you're at, and connecting with where you're going. Where do you want to be, without a constant barrage of noise from the digital? It's going to serve us so well, and we'll be better people. We'll like ourselves more. We'll love ourselves more. We will love more deeply, and we're going to feel better. And us feeling better enables for everyone around us to feel better. And anyway, that's about all I have to say about that. But make a space for yourself and explore that. And just because you do something today doesn't mean that needs to be the way it goes forever. Explore what works for you. Once again, there's not one way that works for everyone. So unplug and plug yourself back into your true self. I love you. I believe in you. I believe in us. I know the world will look completely different a year from now, and that's up to us. We're creating it right now. Cheers.